Everyone should watch Tomo-chan Is a Girl. It is seriously one of the best rom-coms that has been made in a long time. There's only a handful that you can pick from that you can truly look at with a fine-tooth comb and say it did what it set out to do and then some. And by the end of a 13-episode run, we got to witness a great relationship that felt different than the normal pairings. You had a girl with a little more tomboyish attitude who maybe punched a little too much, and an airhead, seemingly clueless June who eventually found his calling and decided to embrace the romance butterflies. And by the end, you leave the show with them in a very solid relationship. You can headcanon as much as you want what a proposal would look like given how their first kiss went down and the confirmation of them in a relationship and I love you, I want to date you, but nonetheless, you leave feeling satisfied. Whether they pull a Horimiya and decide to eventually do a season 2 covering content they didn't adapt and skipped over, or they want to find ways to continue it, it's all possible. But in terms of looking at just this episode and this 13-episode run as a whole, you can't tell me you don't leave feeling satisfied. It's short, sweet, to the point, and it was a fantastic time. Though personally, there was a missed opportunity. There was one missed opportunity with this show, and that is the I hate you. So we finally get to see that classic I hate you dad moment, and the fact that it took 16, 17, 18 years for this poor bastard to get it, it crushed him. So June goes up and fights the dad, and he does try to soften it a bit by bringing in the wife, his first love as we know, but ultimately, had Tomo just come in and said, I love you June and I hate you dad, one would have got a power-up, one would have been curled up in a corner, though obviously it wouldn't have been as romantic and perfect to see him earn it by himself. But you gotta admit, a little bit of a missed opportunity, if only for the comedy alone. Now, I do have a full live reaction to episode 13 of Tomo-chan Is a Girl, so if you are interested in seeing my full uncut thoughts, consider heading on over there and supporting, and you'll get to see just that, because this was a very fun one to watch. Like I say, I think the first few episodes, while fun, they weren't anything remarkable, but it was enough to really say this is a fun rom-com of the season. But very quickly, it just kind of sped up, and I was like, okay, I'm glad I'm wearing my seatbelt because I don't quite know where we're going, but this is getting truly remarkable. And like I said last week, I mean, we knew we were getting in a relationship either in episode 12 or 13. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. And honestly, I think most of us assumed they were in a relationship. But of course, in Tomo-chan fashion, he had to go get permission from the parents. Mom, of course, probably gave him a bouquet of flowers and said, go give it to my girl. And dad was like, you have to beat me in a fight. I mean, the poor bastard, even after touching the ground, he basically was like, yo, you know what, we're gonna keep going because this isn't enough. It actually looked like his fingers were like just a little close to not hitting the ground, but because the wife came in and smacked some sense, he admitted that, okay, yeah, you can have my daughter now. And it was great. We got way more than what you're typically used to in a show like this, because usually you get like a little soft romantic kiss, and given how flustered they were about sitting next to each other, going to a romance movie that showed a little more than kissing than Tomo was anticipating, and June being June, just looking almost Evangelion, just staring into the camera and being like, this is interesting. I love the fact that they just like full on embraced that kiss and just left us with this Cupid's arrow to the heart. And it's hard not to say you walk out of episode 13 feeling like you just got diabetes. Like, this is the sweetest thing ever, and I wouldn't have it any other way. This episode really didn't have to do anything other than a kiss. I think that was the one thing missing in terms of it, and the fact that they prolonged their getting into a relationship. I mean, this show is a masterclass at baiting you without pulling your strings a little too much. Often when you have the whole like, because seriously, look at this episode. Any other show would have made that at least 3 episodes. Dad, I need dad's approval in order to be with you. And then it just would have continued on and on and on. This episode, just like, it just sped through it. It made it feel natural. It made it feel like, okay, even if it would take maybe longer realistically for these type of 2 lovable idiots, as a viewer experience, it would grow boring. And I just love the fact that they didn't waste our time. First half of this anime, mostly on our girl's perspective. Once that starts feeling like it's going to be boring, they switch over to June, and June takes the driver's wheel. And then episode 13 brings them together on equal terms. They're both embarrassed, they're both clueless, and the fact that it just feels like they're gonna have one of the most chaotic vanilla relationships I think I will ever see in anime. I say vanilla because, goddamn, just the wholesomeness and purity of these two, needing the parents' permissions, the embarrassments, just, they're definitely gonna be on that vanilla territory, but bless them, they're gonna have a fantastic relationship for sure. I do love some of the more sexual innuendo jokes. I mean, in the early stages of the show, there were some interesting ones that I wasn't quite expecting. But I mean, that moment on the bed where he's like holding his fist and she's like, oh wait, okay, so we're gonna have the SEX and he's into that? Oh, okay, where are we going with this? I think the rocket taking off, I mean, if that isn't an innuendo of something getting a little excited, I don't know what is. This show actually had some surprising adult humor, and I think early on that was one of the things that kind of caught me by surprise. I was like, okay, usually in these shows you tiptoe around even holding hands, yet this show's making some more sexual oriented jokes that aren't like grotesque or like super perverted, but it's enough to be like, that's honestly kind of humorous in a way you're not expecting. And then it kind of got back into what Tomo-chan wanted to be. It was a more wholesome, if not violent show. But honestly, the humor definitely hit different. Never really felt like they were always trying to tell a joke, but some of the situational comedy just made me laugh. I was like, okay, I wasn't quite expecting that. And the fact that the sidecast actually felt like a sidecast with their own stories. The fact that Mizuzu, a girl who was so worried about her best friend getting in a relationship and no longer being by her side 24/7, now has a best friend in Carol and is really encouraging. Yeah, she and obviously Carol get upset when she doesn't return texts over break. But the fact that these characters, or, you know, side characters that you thought, oh, June's never going to be friends with him, but the fact that he'll go to him for advice, it just shows like natural progression, and it never felt like we were trying to get certain characters into a situation because it was convenient, but more so it just worked for their character arcs. Mizuzu didn't end up in a relationship, even though someone very much showed interest in her by the end of the show. That's completely natural and believable, but a character like June and Tomo, of course, should be in a relationship. It just felt like the show knew what it was doing. As much as I do love rom-coms, I have fallen out of them more than normal. If you would have asked me a couple years ago, rom-coms would have been my favorite genre that I would announce in anime. But eventually, it just kind of felt like we were dragging things along too much. And while there is dozens and dozens of amazing rom-coms that I consider masterclass or at the very least worthwhile to watch, there isn't many coming out. I think I do love Tonikawa. I do love Tomo-chan Is a Girl. I do love Snafu. There are these key shows that I do really enjoy, but they do feel like they're spaced out more and more these days. But the ones that do stick out, man, it's hard not to gush about them for as long as they're airing, and we'll probably continue to recommend well into next year because it's going to be hard to find something that hits quite like this because it didn't feel like your traditional rom-com. It broke almost every rule that I was expecting, and honestly left me with a grin on my face. We ended with a Christmas episode of all things. I just love it. It's just so different, it's so fresh, and honestly, I can see myself rewatching this one very soon. But those are just my feelings. Let me know what you thought either of this last episode or the show as a whole down below. Drop a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. Be sure to ring that bell so you can get notified when I upload on the channel, and of course, as I mentioned, I do have full live reactions to all 13 episodes available on my Patreon, and while you're there, you can also get a video shoutout. So today, we have Lily Bones, Ren Dolan, Momoko, Octavia Hutchins, Travis Bogon, and Artur Kunha. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.